Friend, Shabbat Shalom again. Still have a little cold, but I'm okay. You know, this message, you have to let it simmer a little bit, okay? Just let it simmer. Don't judge it before it gets to the end. Now, as many of you have been doing over the last couple of days, I was collecting all the information from my accountant for the 2024 income taxes. And they added up the amount of money that Jane and I spent on renovating our house over the last year. I was talking to Becky about it before, and I almost fainted. It was not good. And we spent too much, and we made a lot of mistakes, but that's life. But some of the work had to be done, and especially the work that needed to strengthen the foundation of our house. Our house was built in the late 1940s, and some of the concrete had to be dug up because, if I showed you pictures of the foundation, it looked like it was the San Francisco earthquake had just taken place. So it had to be done and whatever, and hopefully it's not going to fall down any longer. And literally the survival of our home depended on strengthening the foundation. Regardless of how knowledgeable or ignorant we are about Judaism, and nobody knows enough about Judaism, most people understand the reality that the Sabbath is central to Judaism. And it is the foundation on which our religious life is built. You know, we're not here today. I mean, Jews have a worship 3 times a day, 7 days a week. I mean, it's on some, like on Yom Kippur, there's more than 3 services a day. But there's prayer every day of the year, and most congregations try to maintain a weekly worship. But of course, Shabbat worship has a special significance. There is a recognition that the Sabbath is foundational. It's our compass. And without Shabbat, there's no Judaism. To its credit, the Orthodox Judaism makes that very clear, and to be Shomer Shabbat, the preserver or guardian of the Shabbat, is a religious ideal. Now, the Sabbath as a concept is interwoven in our Judaism. It's everywhere. I mean, I was just, as I was preparing my remarks, I started flipping through the Torah, and this is obvious, but sometimes you have to state the obvious. Chapter 2, God finishes creating the world, and it says God blessed the 7th day and declared it holy because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that He had done, such as the story of heaven and earth when they were created. God created the world, and God said, "I'm tired. I'm going to rest. And I'm going to replenish myself." And the 10 Commandments. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. You shall not do any work. Or I love this. This is the one when I was a kid I used to love for some reason. I guess because it could end up possibly being something negative. So when the Israelites were hungry and God fed them manna, God says to them, "So they gathered every morning, each as much as he needed it, for when the sun grew hot, it would melt." In other words, they'd go out and get all this manna, whatever it was. I love the idea in Jewish tradition, it could be anything you want. It could be a bagel. If you're a vegetarian, it could be tofu. It could be whatever you want it to be. So it says, on the 6th day, they gathered double the amount of food, 2 omers for each. And when all the chieftains of the community came and told Moses, he said, "That is what the Lord meant. Tomorrow is a day of rest, a holy day, Sabbath of the Lord." In other words, you're going to get a double portion, but it's going to allow you to observe the Sabbath. Judaism is built on the Sabbath. A couple of minutes ago, we very casually and because we follow a certain liturgy, we read this paragraph, chapter in Page 90, it says, O God, O ages, grant that our worship on this Sabbath be acceptable to you. Sanctify us through your commandment, that the serenity of Shabbat may enter our lives. Teach us to be satisfied with the gifts of your goodness and grateful to rejoice in all that you bestow. I think I made my point. We don't get anywhere without talking about the Sabbath. Okay, in 1999, when the Reformed Jews got together in Pittsburgh and reiterated what they believe Judaism is about, this is what the Reformed Jews said in 1999 in Pittsburgh. They said, "We bring Torah into the world when we seek to sanctify the times and places of our lives through regular home and congregational observance. Shabbat calls us to bring the highest moral values to our daily labor and to culminate the work week with Kiddushah, holiness, minucha, rest, and oneg, joy." Okay, but what is Sabbath observance? And how do we, specifically Reformed Jews, observe it? And I believe that our portion, when you look at it really carefully, opens up something that's rather remarkable. And give me a moment. Here is what happens in our Torah portion, this is the next to last, and next week is the last portion of the book of Exodus. Some years, this portion, next week's portions are combined. Okay. So here's what is reported in the Torah this week. We have a detailed description of the construction of the tabernacle, this Mishkan, this portable religious this portable altar, and a kind of prelude to the temple in Jerusalem. That the Israelites was the focus of their religious life. And it was very elaborate. It was very crafted. And we are told in this Torah portion that the people were so generous to provide the raw materials. And all the crafting of this Mishkan, of this tabernacle, was done by Bezalel, this incredible artist, like a Michelangelo of his time, and his assistants. And we are told that he was endowed with creativity and expertise. And we're told that he had this divine spirit of skill and of ability and knowledge in every kind of craft. And also know that he also knew how to give instructions to others. So not only being an artisan, he was really a foreman and general contractor. He got the Israelites to do holy things with their hands. And the Torah, in its explicit detail, can be incredibly boring. I mean, when I come to studying this parsha, I could do two things. I could look at the commentators and they analyze everything said, but I have to admit, sometimes I skim through and I said, "This is so boring, Alan. I know you should not be bored by it, but just read it." The Torah cites every part of the tabernacle that needed to be crafted. And it's an incredible undertaking and requires not only skill, but hard work. But here is something which seems out of place, but in the end is quite important. Let my sermon simmer. At the beginning of the portion, before the work was to be undertaken, this incredible construction project, I don't know how to describe it. Moses reiterates the laws of Shabbat. He says, "These are the things the Lord has commanded you to do. On the 6th-day work may not be done, but on the 7th you shall have the Sabbath, a complete rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does not work on it shall be put to death. And you shall kindle no fire throughout your settlement on the Sabbath day." So this is what the rabbis do. The rabbis say, wait a minute. Let's think for a moment. I know what we're not allowed to do on the Sabbath. We're not allowed to do anything on the Sabbath that the Israelites had to do to make the tabernacle. Did anyone ever understand that? Okay. Now, what are the things that we were told that we had to do to make the tabernacle? If you really want to get a nice little book, and it's such a nice book. It's called The Shabbat, The Sabbath by Dr. Isaac Grunfeld. And he analyzes the idea of the Sabbath. But what is melacha? What's work? And so, according to the Mishnah, there are 39 things that were done to build the tabernacle that we're not able to do on the Sabbath. Now, I want you to know something. Golf is not forbidden on the Sabbath. Tennis isn't. Now, you might not be able to, if you take your club and you kind of hit some grass and you uproot it, you might have violated the Sabbath. But hitting the ball is not violating, but we can have a great Talmudic discussion of this. I don't want anyone to give up playing golf and tennis on the Sabbath. Okay, so here's the deal. Here are the 39 things that that were done and you're not able to do. Plowing, sowing, reaping, sheaf making, threshing, winnowing, selecting, sifting, grinding, kneading, baking, sheep shearing, bleaching, combing raw materials, dyeing like dye, not dying, spinning. You're not allowed to dye on the Sabbath either, but that's besides the point. You don't want that. Okay, weaving, separating of threads, tying a knot, untying a knot, sewing, tearing, trapping, slaughtering, skinning, tanning, scraping, pelts, marking out, cutting to shape, writing, erasing, building, demolishing, kindling a fire, extinguishing a fire, the final hammer blow, and carrying from the private to the public domain. Let me see. Tula, could you repeat the 39 back to me now? No. Okay, so here's the deal. So what unites all these categories are any creative action which makes a significant change in the material environment. Any act, however trivial, which demonstrates man's mature mastery of nature and purposeful creative activity. Now, friends, people can decide on their own if these prohibitions are relevant or not. That's the nature, obviously, of Reform Judaism. And for the record, most Reform Jews see these as these guidelines as more quaint than obligatory. My own religious life is confronted constantly with tormenting myself about this. Do I ride on the Sabbath? Should I use electricity? Shouldn't I use it? Should I touch technology? Shouldn't I touch technology? I'm always struggling with it. My whole Jewish life is a struggle for me. I'll never be satisfied with what kind of Jew I am or what kind of Jew I'm not. Why struggle with it? Why not just say, it's all irrelevant? But I think that would be a gigantic mistake, because I think it addresses something that is incredibly urgent, and that's why I wanted you to let this simmer for a moment. Human beings are incredibly creative. And we have remarkable ability to build things and to alter nature and to transform reality. And the creation of the tabernacle in the wilderness was symbolized really the beginning of civilization, of technology. What's more basic in human history than building an edifice, building a house of God? Creating buildings and furniture and clothing and sacred vessels, that's the height of human creativity, especially in the ancient world. But there is always a danger in being involved in something so creative. And if you ever want to read a book and just read a couple of pages, I would ask you to get a hold of Abraham Joshua Heschel's The Sabbath, Its Meaning for a Modern Man. It's worth reading. I don't care if you're a Jew or not a Jew, if you're Chabad or secularist. I don't care what you are. It talks about all of this and then says, why should all of this matter? And can I read you a couple paragraphs, and then you're going to get why I took you through this journey of the Sabbath. So Heschel is asking a question. He's talking to you and me, saying, what does it all mean? Oh, observe the Sabbath, honor the Sabbath, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you've heard that 1,000 times. So what possibly relevant could it mean to be living in the suburbs of Kansas City? How does it say anything to us? And this is what Heschel says. I think he wrote in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken, who knows. He says, technical civilization is the product of labor, of man's exertion of power for the sake of gain, for the sake of producing goods. It begins when man, dissatisfied what is available in nature, becomes engaged in the struggle with the forces of nature to enhance his safety and to increase his comfort. To use the language of the Bible, the task of civilization is to subdue the earth, to have dominion over the beast. In other words, we try to
we try to take the raw materials and make the world into something that's good for us. And then he goes on. It's so brilliant. He says how proud we are. Often our victories in the war with nature, proud of the multitude of instruments we have succeeded in inventing, of the abundance of commodities we have been able to produce. Yet our victories have become to resemble defeats. In spite of our triumphs, we have fallen victims to the work of our hands, as it is the force we had conquered have conquered us. Oh, now he's got my attention. What has conquered us? What's taken us over? He says, is our civilization a way to disaster, as many of us are prone to believe? Is civilization essentially evil, to be rejected and condemned? The faith of the Jew is not a way out of this world, but a way of being within the world and about the world, not to reject, but to surpass civilization. The Sabbath is a day on which we learn the art of surpassing civilization. In other words, we're part of this world that we create, but we don't want to be controlled by this world. Okay? So this is what he says. Then he gets, let me give you two more paragraphs and then you'll really get what I'm trying to say. He says, to set apart one day of a week for freedom, a day on which we would not use the instruments which have been so easily turned into weapons of destruction, a day for being with ourselves, a day of detachment from the vulgar, the independence of the external obligations, a day on which we stop worshiping the idols of technical civilization. In other words, in regard to external gifts, to our outward possessions, there is only one proper attitude: to have them and to be able to do without them. So the Sabbath is about our independence from technological civilization. Okay, so I'm not going to read this. He's better than anything that I could create. So what is he saying? He's saying is, we're so overwhelmed by our creativity. We're enslaved to the things. Now let's be honest. I mean, I don't know about you. I hate to admit this. And after Bezos, and I'm no friend of Jeff Bezos anymore. So if I had any integrity, I wouldn't use Amazon anymore. Okay. But it's really hard for me to refrain from using my credit card to buy something on Amazon. And when the Sabbath tells me, which I don't use your credit card, I realize how entrapped I am by our civilization. How many of us can function without our computer for a moment? How many of us can live without constant streaming of information and sound from our devices? Oh, look how AI is creeping into our lives. We're no longer certain if we're real or not. And you can get girlfriends or boyfriends or friends through AI. What about our smartphones? I don't have mine up here. Becky, where's yours? Becky worries me because I'm not making fun of you at all. But you're attached to it. You're attached. You're attached.
But I have it here in case.
I know in case of emergency, in case I get a cough, you can call the doctor. I get it. But we're attached to it. We're enslaved by it. I once was in a high holidays and I found out that during a sermon I was giving, someone was texting someone about my sermon, and they were sitting in another part of the sanctuary. We're so connected. We have trouble getting through this. We're just so damn connected. We stare at our smartphones. We worry about something that we've missed on social media or some text that we haven't responded to. Or have you ever been with teenagers? They're sitting with each other and they're not talking to each other. They're texting each other. How incredible our technology is, but it's like taking us. We're slaves to it. And like in social media, what's the worst thing that can happen to you? You're ghosted. This technology world says you don't exist anymore because you're not acknowledged anymore. So what is Shabbat about? It's rediscovering that without technological advances, we are still something. It's about recovering our souls. It's recognizing that the things that we create should help us, not enslave us. It's recognizing the things in our world which are meant to improve our lives are also able to disconnect us from our lives, and that's what's at stake. Most of us don't observe a 24-hour Shabbat, but just think, you guys come on this Friday night, and just for a couple of hours, what happens here? Hopefully something good, but it's an oasis. It says, the world is not going to make demands upon me. I'm just going to be here.